Over the years, a number of gadgets have come to market claiming to be future-proof, but in almost every case, a superior device eventually emerged. From compact discs to GPS units to HD TV, nothing is ever truly future-proof. But what about the places we live? Can they be future-proofed? I'm Chad Vanderveen, editor of FutureStructure, and joining me on this edition of FutureStructure Radio are Donna, Huey, and Rick Cunningham of Atkins Global. Rick is the Senior Project Director of Future-Proofing Cities Planning and Urban Design at Atkins, and Donna is a Senior Vice President and Director of Strategic Ventures. They believe that not only can cities be future-proof, but that future-proofing them is critical to their long-term survival and prosperity. I'm talking with Rick Cunningham and Donna Huey of Atkins Global. You guys, could you, before we get started into some of the questions I have, could you tell me a little bit about what Atkins Global is and what your guys' area of expertise is?
Sure, Chad. Atkins is a global design and engineering firm. We have focuses across a number of different disciplines, including transportation, energy, quite a bit of large-scale planning work. Some notable projects globally for Atkins include our work with the London Olympics 2012 and the planning around that, such as complex rail projects as the Riyadh Metro. So quite a diverse portfolio of infrastructure, design, engineering, and planning expertise across the world.
Now, for our purposes, obviously at FutureStructure, we're involved in looking at how civic leadership can use technology built into the infrastructure to help create smarter cities and give themselves opportunities to become more intelligent about the data their cities produce, the infrastructure itself, and use that data to understand how systems within a city are connected or could be made to connect. So you get that whole cities as a system concept and understanding. And you guys are doing something called future-proofing cities. What does that mean?
Future-proofing cities means an understanding of the complex risks that a city faces in light of rapid urbanization. And when you couple that with the dramatic environmental risks and looking to develop policies and plans that mitigate. And really it means not just looking at that typical short-term capital improvement planning horizon of 5 or 10 years, but forecasting 20, 30, even 50 years ahead and taking steps towards driving resiliency in all of our thinking, straight down through to the community members themselves. Future-proofing cities as it exists today is an established framework that Atkins has created to help city planners address the environmental and infrastructure risks to their long-term prosperity and growth. This framework really is the result of extensive research done by Atkins, supported with quite a bit of data, and working with partners such as the United Kingdom Department for International Development and University College London. And we challenged a group of young innovators and forward-thinking planners a few years back to really look at this reality of urbanization and what we would call the perfect storm of risks, so to speak, that need to be understood and mitigated. And they really took the time to look at a city's assets through a long-term lens and debate options and scenarios that could help develop a set of solutions. The framework that we created starts with an urban diagnostic. The research has showed us that many cities could be characterized into 5 urban types based upon the most significant risks they face. So these include things such as energy-intensive cities with significant carbon footprints, cities that faced major climate hazards, and cities with risk around their regional support systems for things like water and food. From there, the framework assesses vulnerability issues at social levels and strengths of infrastructure, and finally, their capacity to act. What is the state of the economy, the government, and the overall maturity of the delivery systems? The framework embodies an extensive policy and solution portfolio so that based upon that diagnostic, we can then help identify potential solutions. Our goal really being to isolate solution sets that provide that double or triple win across a number of risk categories.
Looking at the U.S. in particular, are there any cities in the United States that are actively future-proofing as you described it right now?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we certainly saw quite a response in the Northeast after Superstorm Sandy, and people realized they couldn't plan in silos anymore. They really needed to look at the interdependencies of the different assets and how they work together and how they needed to be thought about and planned together to be resilient in the future. Um, I did want to point out, again, even though outside the U.S., a couple examples that I think are interestingly relevant to the U.S. As we finished up the research from the study, a few of those cities that we were working with actively engaged us to go forward. And we ended up finding ourselves, for example, in India working with the cities of Bangalore and Madurai, and what was a small city action plan quickly blossomed into the development of a planning and design handbook for integrated city development, really looking at a low carbon and resource efficient future. These are things we deal with right here in the U.S., energy management, carbon emissions, and those work products are directly applicable. Another example, the city of Lagos, the second fastest city in Africa, where focus has been on reliable access to power. We were able to really use the framework there and look at the interdependencies between that access to power and things like agriculture, transport, and housing. So whether it be a carbon issue, a power energy issue, these future-proofing concepts are at play, and we don't always have to look in our own backyard for good examples of powerful policies and plan capabilities, because some of them actually exist in outside of our region as well. But right here in the U.S., closer to home, Atkins has been working with several cities, for example, in California, where the emphasis is around climate change. We've been seeing quite a shift in our services from just developing climate action plans to developing climate adaptation plans, where we begin to integrate broader sets of challenges, including water supply and socioeconomic factors and transportation, into the concepts of sea level rise around our coastlines. And then there's great examples stemming from philanthropic investments, such as those cities participating in Rockefeller's 100 Resilient Cities, like Boulder, Colorado, Norfolk, Virginia, and Jacksonville, Florida. One of the really important things we've realized is at the heart of solving these complex challenges is removing those proverbial silos and getting people to communicate. It's really an adaptive change management challenge and not so much a technical challenge. Human nature is a powerful force, and if we don't actively manage the way people behave around these resiliency issues, then we would retreat to our silos where we're comfortable. I've frequently used the term silo safety. We retreat to that place where it's comfortable, and we just gravitate that way. So we can solve all sorts of technical problems, but if we haven't properly or fully communicated all the aspects and dynamics of what we're facing with these risks and challenges, then the technical solution will ultimately fail.
Yeah, that reminds me of when we're talking about technology in our various other publications. A lot of times we come to the conclusion it's not really a technology issue that we're talking about. It's a people and cultural issue and getting behaviors changed. So it sounds like that is applicable here. But I was curious, how long has the Future Proofing program been going on, and why is Atkins involved?
The Future Proofing Cities study was released in late 2012, so since that time it's really gone from, a report culminating a body of research into action, and there's quite a bit of action that's been going on, as I mentioned a couple examples just a few moments ago since that time. And why Atkins involved is really kind of where it becomes a bit personal for me, actually, and why I've found it so exciting to be with Atkins. Sure, we did the research. We produced a report. Organizations do that all the time. However, this one has been different. It's really caused a sea change in our thinking within our organization worldwide. It seems to have defined a cause that we can all easily embrace. Whether we're engineers or planners or scientists, We see what this means, and we see how we can contribute to the solution. For our global design and engineering community, both Atkins and beyond, it's a community that's very used to solving problems that are presented to them. But in this new world order of rapid urbanization, infrastructure stressors, resource constraints, and natural risks, the problems aren't so evident on the surface. The interfaces really have to be analyzed carefully before the problem can even be defined. So for our industry and for Atkins, we see this as a call to action, to lead and not to follow, to become bold and more innovative. It's daunting and exciting all at the same time. A quote comes to mind from our Atkins CEO, Dr. Uwe Kruger, who notes that future-proofing a city is not just about getting one of the parts right. It's about getting all the parts right concurrently, developing a holistic plan that recognizes the interdependencies of these risks and drives sustainability for the entire city, with the goal not being just to develop a resilient city, but one that's prepared to react, respond, recover, and adapt to meet future needs.
So you mentioned interdependencies, which I think is interesting because, as I think you know, with FutureStructure, and like I mentioned a little bit ago, what we're trying to do is look at how the infrastructure in a city is deeply interdependent on each other piece, whether that's water, waste, energy, transportation, or the existing or built environment, how those pieces really connect. And when you understand those connections, how you can better understand your city as a whole and work to improve it. So I guess on that note, what are some of the things that city leadership or regional leaders need to be seriously considering right now as it relates to this concept of future-proofing a city?
I really appreciate that question because I recently joined Atkins after the privilege for me to serve as the planning director for 4 years in Omaha, Nebraska, and I kind of saw through a number of different stresses and shocks to Omaha the importance of future-proofing, although I did not know that term then. So when we talk about what cities ought to be looking at right now and leaders in cities, I think the word you use, that interconnectedness, is very important. I think you can look at it in a number of different dimensions. One is the vulnerabilities and the risks themselves, how interconnected they are. Urbanization is a vulnerability, is a risk. We're undergoing that. The growing pace of urbanization is causing increasing stress on cities, both small and large, stress on the systems that make them. The energy use and carbon footprint is caused by and can be dealt with by the patterns of urbanization and then impacted by changing temperatures, and such as in California and in Texas, where we'll drive up energy use and carbon footprints. The extreme events that we are experiencing exposes our cities and our citizens and our infrastructure to new and increased stress and pressures, and perhaps causing failures in an accelerated manner. Natural resources and the preservation of them need to be balanced with our need for space, our management of our waste stream, and the creation of pollution, which impacts our health and quality of life. And then you get the economics, the jobs, and the production of goods and consumption of goods, and how that's impacted by all of the above. And all of that then, equates to the quality of life and impacts our quality of life in our cities, which is very important. We talked about how you then build resilience, and that's collaborative. That's interconnected. It requires, as Donna was just saying, a broad-based engagement of the stakeholders, the people and partners that can be brought around the table. When we talk about people, we talk about family, we talk about friends, we talk about neighbors, we talk about networks. The public sector, we're talking about the political structure, the public safety, emergency services area, infrastructure, as Donna pointed out, transportation, utilities, communication. Communication we saw at Superstorm Sandy, very important. We are very dependent on being able to communicate, to understand, to ask for help, and to give help. Education is very important as it evolves around looking at and studying and modeling and helping us to move forward. The private sector is very important. They have assets and resources at risk also, and they are part of the whole spectrum that is at risk, and that's corporations, that's chambers of commerce, that's civic groups. And then, as the example with the Rockefeller Foundation, philanthropic organizations are very important, as well as other social support organizations. The capacity for us to act within our resource-constrained environment, and what city has enough money to do everything that they'd like to do, and then, as Donna pointed out, we've got a challenged infrastructure environment where our infrastructure in many cities is 100 years old and it fails every day, such as out in California with the massive water main breaks, with flooding that causes roads to have serious damage. So basically we need to partner in an interconnected way or collaboratively, to use a military term, to force multiply how we fund and plan our resiliency efforts. We certainly have to prioritize, and we have to communicate, and we have to invest to deliver those maximum multiple and cross-section sector values. The other thing is that for me, it's really a process. It's a cycle. It starts with policy, perhaps moves to planning, participation, and preparation. But then when you have a shock or a stress, you need to understand what has happened, what the lessons are. You need to adapt and transform so that you can bounce forward, not just simply bounce backwards. And the reason that whole cyclic thing happens is important because, as Donna indicated, we're not talking about a 5 to 10 year window. We're talking 30, 50, 60 years. And so we're looking very long term. We're making assumptions based upon projections, models, and evolving science, and everything is evolving. So we need to continually use this planning process, these plans that we put together for future-proofing, as a living document that's not sitting on a shelf, that we are taking what we learn, adjusting, maximizing our values, both in a hard dollars and cents cost, but also in value for society, in green and soft infrastructure.
So if a city or city manager or mayor is interested in learning more about what it means to future-proof a city, where can they go to find out more information?
Chad, they can go to futureproofingcities.com. They can also go to atkinsglobal.com/FPC. And they can download the entire report. They can download the tools, the framework, the diagnostic information, and more importantly, they can join the discussion. We've got the blogs and Twitter feeds and space where anyone interested in learning more, in participating in the thought leadership around this issue and sharing ideas can join the discussion with us and help us all on this journey. Going back to the partnership thing can't be understated. This is something we're all in together, and it's going to take a number of different skill sets, minds, and talents for us to put the kind of planning in place that's going to help future-proof our cities.
Excellent, and we'll put a link up to that site on FutureStructure.com. Rick, Donna, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you. Appreciate your time.
It's been a pleasure.
That's it for this edition of Future Structure Radio. I'm Chad Vanderveen. Thanks for listening.